Hey guys, my name is Deb Marnie and I'm from Aussie Maille. Welcome to our chain mail tutorial channel. Hey guys, how are you? Big hi, hello. So pleased to see you here. Thanks for popping in and spending some time with me today. So today I've got what is the second kit from our Maille box subscription service. This is the last kit. This is the last month and this is the last kit that we'll be running as part of our subscription service for now. But anyway, this necklace I have named Adaline. It uses the Japanese 12-in-2 weave. It's a simple weave, but it's a very effective necklace. But that's enough from me, guys. Let's just jump straight into it. Okay, guys, well, here is a sample piece of the Adaline necklace. So coming up on the screen now are the ring sizes and tools you'll need to make this piece up. So as you can see, it utilizes the Japanese 12-in-2 weave. It's a simple piece. Takes a little bit of time to make up, as all Japanese weaves tend to, but it creates a very stunning piece that I'm sure you'll be completely thrilled with once you finalize it. Okay, so the necklace is made up of a lot of little units, little pieces of Japanese 12-in-2. So I'll show you how to go ahead and make these units, and then we just simply join them all together. So for each of these units, before you start, you're going to want to close 32 of your 18 gauge 1/8 of an inch ring. Okay, with Japanese weaves, it's often best to pre-close your small rings. It just makes it a lot easier to do. But if you close up 32 of each of those, now that's per unit. I just did a unit at a time. It's as far as my patience could stand. If you can close more than that, by all means go ahead and do it. The version of the necklace that I made has 15 of those units in place, if you feel so inclined to pre-close them in advance. Alright, so once you've got your 32 rings pre-closed, the next step is using the 16 gauge 10mm ID rings, our largest rings that we'll be using. Now, this is probably going to be the trickiest part of the whole necklace, because these are a high aspect ratio ring, which means it's a very large ID in comparison to the wire diameter. And these rings can be a little tricky to get a nice closing on, but I needed this size ring to create the piece that I wanted. So my apologies in advance. I can only advise patience and care, and eventually you will get a nice closure with these rings. But anyway, so open up your one of your 10mm ID rings, and on that we want to pop half of the rings that we just closed. So 16 of our pre-closed 1/8 of an inch ring. So if you go ahead and pop 16 of those on. Okay, so there's 16 of those little 1/8 of an inch ring on, and now comes the fun bit, the closing of our large ring. So as I said, it is a little tricky. I find that often if I overextend, if I squish them together a little bit more than I normally would, so when I do that, when you're doing the back and forward movement, you also do a slight inwards push. And I find with the high aspect ratio rings, if I make that inwards push over exaggerated, more than I normally would, I find that when I bring it back to line up, I often get a better join. Okay, so once we've got one of those rings in place, we then have to go through that hell again and put a second ring in place. Okay, so just feed that through all of your small rings that are on there. Be careful that you don't Mobius your large rings. It is easy to do with such large aspect ratio rings. And then again, do the same thing. So you can see that I've gone quite over a lot when I've put my inward pressure in, and I find that often helps when trying to close these high aspect ratio rings. Create that little bit more tension in the wire and get a nice join. Okay, so once we've got that in place, we then start working with our 16 gauge 5.2mm ID ring. Okay, so taking out one of those rings, opening it up, we're going to go through 2 of the small rings that are on our center rings. And then before we close that up, we're going to pop on 4 of our pre-closed rings. Okay, so putting on 4 of those, and we're going to close that up. And then we're going to double that medium ring up, that 5.25mm ID ring. We're going to double that one up. So just go through the same path, picking up all 6 of those small rings. Okay, so our work should look like this. And then what we're going to do, we're going to take up another 5.25mm ring. We're going to go through 2 of the rings here that we just added, 2 of those small rings. Okay, so separate that pair out. We don't want the middle pair, we want one end pair of rings. And then we're going to go through the next pair of rings that's on our center chain, our center ring, I should say, just like that. And then before we close, we want to add 2 of our pre-closed rings. Close that up. And then we want to double that ring up. So the Japanese 12 in 2 weaves are really quite simple weaves to do, but they can be time consuming and they can be a little fiddly because there's so many smaller rings. So although they're easy rings to do, weaves to do, they do require a little bit of patience. Okay, so once we've got that in place, we're just going to keep doing that all the way around our center ring, picking up the 2 rings that we just placed, picking up the next 2 rings coming off our large center rings, and popping on 2 of our pre-closed small rings, and then doubling our medium size ring up. Okay, so we just want to repeat that all around our center ring until you have placed 7 pairs of our medium rings. Okay, so if you guys want to go ahead and do that now, and then once you've placed 7 pairs, come back and I will show you what the next step is. Okay, so you can see I've placed 7 pairs of my medium-sized rings around my circle. I've got no more pre-closed rings for this unit left over, but I do have these 3 pairs of small rings here. So what I'm going to do is just put our final pair of rings in place by going through all 3 of those pairs of small rings that are loose. So you just go through and pick all of them up, just like that. Close that ring up, and then of course double that ring. Okay, so that's what we've got so far. That's your center bit. And now what we're going to do, we're going to go back to our small rings, our 1/8 of an inch ring, and we're going to put 2 of those through every one of the middle rings. So we're going to place another 16 of these small rings around our work. Okay, so if you guys go ahead and put a pair of your small rings, your smallest rings, into each pair of your medium-sized rings, and when you've gone all the way around, I will meet you back here and we will go over the next step. Okay, Okay, so you can see that I've added 2 pairs of our small rings to each of the medium rings in our piece. And then just to finish this up, we're going to take up another medium ring. We're going to pick up 2 of the small rings on that ring and the next 2 small rings. So we're putting our medium ring through 4 of those small rings that we just added. Close that up and double that ring. Okay, so your work should look like that. We then want to go to the next set of loose rings in our piece and do exactly the same thing. So go through those 2 sets of small rings, the next 2 in your piece. So we're effectively turning our circle of Japanese 12 in 2 into a square or a diamond of 12 in 2. So we just want to go around our work, joining the next 2 pairs of small rings together. So go to our next 2 pairs, join those until we, as I said, until we've got a square piece of Japanese 12 and 2, which means you would have placed a total, obviously, of 4 pairs of the medium rings. So just do our last pair, going through both sets of loose small rings, closing it up, and placing our center. And that's it. That is one finished unit. So as I said, to do the the necklace as it stands, as I've done the tutorial for, I used a total of 15 of these units. You may need less of those for yourself. So just go ahead and make up as many as you need. You can of course make them up as you go along. You can make up a handful of them to what you think you'll need, then connect them up. And if you need to make more, it's easy, because it's unit based, it's easy to just expand on your necklace. So once you've made up all of those, meet me back here, guys, and I'll show you what I did to put it all together. Okay, so this is a simple build. It's a simple necklace to join up. So all I did was I took one of my units and made that the center unit by putting it as a diamond. So it's this way in the necklace. The subsequent units, I just stacked up square to each side. So one over here, and then there would be one over there, and then they would just join up behind. So that first unit is positioned as a diamond. The rest of the units are then square onto each other. All right, and all I did was to join them together was use the 3.5mm ID rings. Okay, they're slightly larger than the ones that I used to make the units with. I just found it gave it a little bit more movement, a little bit easier to fit. So we just need to join the corner rings, the corner pairs together. So 3.5mm through one corner of one unit, through the corner of the other unit, close that up, and of course it's Japanese 12 in 2. You have to double up all your small rings, otherwise it doesn't look quite right. So you just double that up and then do the other corner. Double that ring as well. Okay, and you would just keep building up on that side by joining that way, and then of course you would do the other side by joining to these ones here. So showing you on this completed piece, there's our center diamond, and then you just add all up one side, all up the other side, just attaching them in the same method that I just showed you until you reach the length that you require. And then what I did was, so the pieces didn't go all the way around my neck, to help with the fitting, I created a small piece of chain. You would use the attachment rings, the 18 gauge 3.5mm ID rings for that, just to top it, just attach that small chain to the top corner of your last two pieces on the sides, and then attach your clasp. And I just used a slightly larger ring, which was one of the 5.25mm rings, to close it onto, just to make it a little bit easier to do as you're fumbling around behind your back. But that should give you a nice fit. If you are finding it's bunching a little bit around your neck, shoulder area there, you may actually want to take out a couple of these joining rings here. It will allow the piece a little bit more movement, and it might be able to sit a little bit better. I found doing it this way gave me a good fit for both myself and my daughter. So I think it should fit most people. But if you do have a little difficulty with it sitting flat, you may just want to consider removing some of those attachment rings to help with that. But there you go, guys. There's your Adaline necklace, utilizing the Japanese 12-in-2 weave. Alright my lovelies, well that's it. That is the video tutorial today. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, it's a very simple weave. Japanese 12-in-2 is simple. It is time consuming, but this produces a beautiful statement necklace. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it as well. If you did enjoy the video, guys, don't forget to give it a thumbs up here. If you do have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. Drop them down below the video. Don't forget to check out some of our other channels, other videos while you're here. Hit the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber already. And last but not least, guys, up here in the corner is our link to our store where we sell all the bits and bobs and thingamajigs that you're going to need to make this tutorial up, and many others. Alright guys, thanks again for your time. I hope you're taking care of yourself, and I'll see you all sometime in the very near future. Bye.